You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately try to read the emotional temperature? That hypervigilance, that exhausting need to anticipate the mood of everyone around you before you even speak. You probably thought it was just your personality, a quirky little trait that makes you highly empathetic, but it is not a personality trait. It is a survival mechanism, a perfectly calibrated radar system you developed because the one person who was supposed to be your safe harbor was actually the storm. We rarely talk about maternal emotional trauma with the raw honesty it deserves, mostly because society worships the archetype of the flawless, endlessly sacrificing mother. Yet beneath that cultural pedestal, countless adults are walking around with invisible fractures, trying to heal from a childhood where love felt more like a loaded weapon. If you have ever felt fundamentally flawed or chronically unsure of your own reality, I want you to listen closely. Today, we are diving deep into two specific, subtle, and deeply insidious ways a mother can slowly break her child. Not with physical blows, but with psychological warfare. Think back to when you were a kid. Did the warmth in your home evaporate the second you brought home a B minus instead of an A? Or maybe affection was suddenly withdrawn when you expressed an opinion that clashed with hers. This is the weaponization of conditional love, a dynamic where affection is not a given right, but a currency you have to constantly earn. When a mother treats her love as a transactional reward for compliance or achievement, she fundamentally rewires her child's developing brain. You learn early on that your authentic self is dangerous, unacceptable, and unlovable. So you create a polished, compliant version of yourself, a hollow shell purely to secure the emotional scraps she is willing to toss your way. The long-term damage is profound and far-reaching. You grow up into an adult who cannot separate performance from value. You over-deliver in your career. You exhaust yourself in relationships. You live in a low hum of terror that the moment you slip up, the moment you show a crack, the people you love will finally confirm what your childhood taught you, that the real you was never worth staying for. The path forward is radically simple to describe and brutally hard to execute. You have to stop auditioning for your own life. Start practicing radical self-acceptance by celebrating your mundane, unpolished moments. The next time you fail at something, consciously speak to yourself with the tenderness you were denied. You are not a human doing, you are a human being. That distinction is everything. Now let us step into the psychological labyrinth that may have made you question your own sanity. Imagine going to your mother, tears in your eyes, saying, "It hurt my feelings when you said that." And instead of comfort, you are met with, "You are too sensitive." Or worse, "I never said that." You are making things up again. This is gaslighting. And when it comes from a mother, it carries a particular kind of devastation because she is not just dismissing an event. She is dismantling your entire relationship with your own perception. Children are naturally dependent on their caregivers to interpret reality. When a mother consistently tells a child that what they felt did not happen, or that what they saw was wrong, that child does not conclude that their mother is lying. They conclude that they themselves are broken, defective, unreliable narrators of their own experience. The adult who grew up being gaslit often struggles with a specific and crippling pattern. You second-guess yourself constantly. You over-explain your emotions as if you are always bracing for someone to tell you are wrong for having them. You apologize for things that were not your fault. You stay in relationships far longer than you should because you have been trained to doubt your own read on whether something is harmful. Here is what you need to hear. Your feelings were never a problem. Your perception was never broken. You were taught to distrust yourself by someone who needed you to be uncertain in order to remain in control. The healing starts when you begin treating your own experience as credible evidence. start keeping a journal. Not to process emotions, but to anchor yourself to facts. When you feel confused about whether something happened, write it down, date it, trust the person who was there, trust yourself. There is a particular kind of mother who loves so intensely, so completely, that her love becomes a form of erasure. She knows everything about you because you are not allowed to have anything she does not know. She calls it closeness. She frames it as devotion. She tells you that other families are cold and distant, and that you should be grateful for how involved she is. But what she is actually doing is something psychologists call enmeshment, a blurring of emotional boundaries so severe that you stop knowing where she ends and you begin. In an enmeshed household, you are not a separate person. You are an extension of her identity. Your achievements are her trophies. Your failures are her wounds. Your choices are subject to her emotional veto. The moment you try to establish independence, try to have a secret, an opinion, a friendship she does not control, it is met with guilt or grief so overwhelming that you retreat back into the cage just to make the feelings stop. What does this produce in adulthood? An adult who is deeply uncomfortable with autonomy. Someone who feels guilty for having needs. Someone who struggles to make decisions without consulting others because they never learned that their inner compass was valid. Someone who finds it almost impossible to say no because no was never a word that was safe to speak. The work here is quiet and unglamorous. It is learning slowly that you are allowed to exist as a separate person, that having a life your mother does not have access to is not betrayal. It is health. It is the most basic architecture of a self. Some wounds are not delivered in moments of rage. Some are dripped in slowly, steadily over years, delivered in the form of corrections. Your hair would look better if, your body would be more acceptable if, you were smart, but not quite smart enough. You tried, but the execution was off. A mother who is chronically critical rarely sees herself as harmful. In her mind, she is preparing you. She is ensuring you are not blindsided by the harshness of the world. She is simply telling you the truth. But here is what chronic criticism actually builds inside a child. It builds an internal prosecutor, a voice that takes up permanent residence inside your head and narrates your every move with contempt. You internalize her standards so deeply that you no longer need her in the room. You carry her with you everywhere. You become your own harshest judge, holding yourself to a standard that shifts every time you get close to reaching it. Research in developmental psychology consistently shows that children who grow up in environments of chronic criticism are significantly more likely to develop anxiety disorders, perfectionism, and a profound fear of failure that is not about the failure itself. It is about the shame they have been conditioned to associate with imperfection. That shame is not yours. It was handed to you, and you have been carrying it long enough. The antidote is not simply to be kinder to yourself, although that matters. It is to interrogate the voice. The next time the internal critic flares, ask, whose voice is this actually? Is this mine or is this inherited? Because there is a difference between the standards you genuinely hold and the standards that were installed in you without your consent. This one is perhaps the subtlest of all, because it is so often wrapped in the language of closeness and trust. You were always so mature for your age. You were my rock. I do not know what I would have done without you. If you heard versions of these sentences growing up, you need to understand something important. Being treated as mature was not a compliment. It was a burden. It meant that your mother outsourced her emotional regulation to a child who had not yet developed the neurological capacity to carry it. You became her therapist, her confidant, her emotional support system. And in doing so, you learned that love is synonymous with being needed, that your value is rooted in your usefulness. In adulthood, this pattern is almost invisible because it feels so natural. You are drawn to people who need fixing, You feel deeply uncomfortable when things are calm because calm was never the base crisis was. You are the person everyone leans on, but no one thinks to ask how you are. And the most painful part? You prefer it that way because being leaned on is the only form of love you learn to trust. The relearning is slow and disorienting. It involves allowing people to carry their own weight, sitting with the discomfort of not being needed, and discovering for the first time what it feels like to be known for who you are rather than what you provide. We have arrived at the deepest layer, the wound beneath all the other wounds. Everything described so far, the conditional love, the gaslighting, the enmeshment, the criticism, the parentification, when they all converge over years of development, they produce something that psychologists call toxic shame. Not guilt, which says I did something bad, but shame, which says I am something bad. A mother who inflicts toxic shame does not always do so through cruelty. Sometimes she does it through martyrdom. Everything I do for you. Do you know how much I have sacrificed? The message underneath is clear. Your existence is a burden. You owe a debt you can never fully repay. Your needs are an inconvenience. Who you are, at the core, requires constant apology. This shame goes underground. It becomes the invisible framework through which you interpret everything. Why you struggle to receive love without waiting for it to expire. Why success feels fraudulent. Why intimacy makes you want to retreat. Why, no matter how much you achieve, there is a quiet voice that tells you it is only a matter of time before they realize the truth, that you are not as good as they think. Here is what is true instead. You were not born flawed. You were taught to believe you were by someone who was themselves broken, who passed down a wound they never chose to examine. The shame was never a diagnosis. It was a transmission, and transmissions can stop with you. The healing of toxic shame is not a weekend revelation. It is a long and sometimes brutal excavation. It involves therapy, boundary work, grief, and the radical act of choosing, over and over, to treat yourself as someone worth protecting. It involves mourning the mother you deserved and did not get, because that grief is real, and it is necessary, and it does not make you disloyal. It makes you honest. If any part of this felt uncomfortably familiar, I want you to sit with that discomfort rather than dismiss it. Not to assign blame, not to build a case, but to finally extend to yourself the one thing that was withheld, the truth that you are not broken. You are not too sensitive, too needy, or too much. You are a person who built the best possible self from the materials you were given. And the most extraordinary thing about human beings is this: the architecture of your wound does not have to be the architecture of your life. You can build something different. It will take time, it will take courage. But it starts with the moment you stop explaining away what you felt. Stop defending the person who hurt you and start taking seriously the child who was simply trying to survive. The narrator delivers the final 2 sentences of the video's core message, the simplest, most direct, and most powerful lines. That child deserved better, and so do you. This is the emotional resolution of the entire piece. The visual should be the quietest, most human image in the video, no surrealism, just presence and warmth.